You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the Options Insider Radio Network, where we go beyond the traditional world of options and derivatives and peer on over the fence into the world of crypto. We're going to talk the Bitcoin, the ETH, the spot, the futures, the options, the SKEW, the volatility, all that good stuff, and a whole bunch more. My name is Mark Longo from the aforementioned network, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting, at least we hope so, optionsinsider.com. Make sure wherever you're getting this content, of course, of this program and the other stuff we do on the network, there's usually a couple of shows hitting you a day here on the network. Keep rating and reviewing it wherever you find it. There's been a slew of new people discovering the crypto markets and indeed the options markets as a whole over the course of the past year. Keep them turning in the right direction. So wherever you listen to this, keep rating and reviewing. It really does help folks discover the content. And of course, keep sending in those questions and comments. We really do love to hear from all of you out there. And let's see who we're hearing from on the program today. It is time to roll out the Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the program where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto and derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. Next up in the old hot seat is a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Kevin Beardsley, the lead product manager for pro trading over there at Kraken. Kevin, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Hey, Mark, thank you very much for having me today.
Kevin, as we are wont to do with all of our first timers here on the program and indeed on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a little bit of an overview of your background in the financial and indeed the crypto markets and how you found your way to becoming the lead product manager over there at Kraken.
Sure. So I had a life before crypto as an entrepreneur and then as a consultant, but I've been in crypto professionally for about 7 years now. First as the director of membership at the Bitcoin Foundation. Then I've held senior positions at the first insured custodian in cryptocurrency, one of the leading companies for forensic investigations in cryptocurrency for transaction monitoring. I was a managing director at B2C2, which is one of the largest trading firms in this space and one of the largest OTC desks. I was also a head of business development and a partner at Elwood, which is Alan Howard's cryptocurrency. He's the founder of Brevin Howard. It's his cryptocurrency offering. And I've been at Kraken for almost 2 years now, first on the futures side of the business and now on the spot side.
And you're the lead product manager for the pro trading. Does that mean you work predominantly with institutions, or do you oversee the more advanced platform offerings at Kraken? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm responsible for more of the advanced trading options on the front end. So I deal a lot with individual traders who are comfortable with things like limit orders, working with order books, more advanced order types. But I spend about probably half my time with the larger trading firms as well, working on a market making program and trying to make sure that we're dealing to their needs.
Well, let's dive into it over there at Kraken. Ironically enough, we've had this show running. We just hit our 100th episode recently here. So it's been a little over 2 years now that the show is running. This is the first time we've ever had someone from Kraken on the show. So interesting to dive into that a little bit. Obviously, 2021 has been off the charts by just about any measure. Everyone thought 2020 was already crazy enough, but 2021 came in and said, hold my beer. I'll show you what can be done here. And especially from the crypto vantage point, we're literally on another level out here right now. Volume has exploded. Interest has exploded in these markets overall. We see even from our broad network audience who are coming in, usually looking for options and derivatives, are really starting to pay more attention to the crypto space. So I'm sure 2021 has been a banner year for you folks over there at Kraken, Kevin, as well. So why don't you catch us up? What are you guys seeing in terms of volume and trends over there at Kraken these days?
Yeah, it's one of those situations where it's 8 years in the making for us, but to be an overnight success, sort of in the limelight of the broader conversation. 2021 has been absolutely off the charts for us. January and February alone were 15% higher than our entire 2020 volume. We did $116 billion in spot in January and February. New client signups, again, have been off the charts. Again, January and February were 3x higher than we had for all of the second half of last year. Our futures business is doing at $1 billion a day. We've got about $300 to $400 million in open interest. And the incoming interest from both institutions and individuals has been beyond anything we've seen in the past.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. One of the big stories in terms of the options and indeed the traditional financial markets in 2020 was the rise, nay, the explosion of retail, small accounts coming in, the one lots, the Robinhoods, call them whatever you will out there, just really exploding onto the option scene in particular. I'm curious, it sounds like you saw an explosion of volume. Was that in the traditional small accounts that we saw really exploding into the options market last year? Or has it kind of been, like you said, across the board? Was it the big firms, the institutions, kind of all of the above really diving in so far in 2021, Kevin?
Yeah, it's been all of the above, but definitely led by people new to the space and people learning about cryptocurrency for the first time. One of the things I think that I really love about the space is it's like, at least at Kraken, it's one of the only level playing fields you'll get, where an individual can show up with their own API connection and get exactly the same access to infrastructure, the exact same terms as the largest trading firms in the world. So it really levels the playing field for the little guy and allows them to go head to head with the big boys on an equal playing field. And I think that's why one of the reasons people really love the crypto industry.
One of the big talking points we've had on this show, pretty much since its inception, we launched it in the teeth of the crypto winter. So at the time, back in January of 2019, everyone was saying institutions were done with crypto. None of them cared anymore. This asset class was a fad. They had already moved on. And slowly but surely, we've seen that narrative shift. You obviously work with a lot of the institutions in particular over there at Kraken. I'm curious from that perspective as a whole, what has 2021 really meant to them? As your phone has been ringing off the hook with big firms saying, I want to get into this marketplace, has this post-Musk, post-50,000 level in crypto really changed the attitude of a lot of these firms? Maybe a couple of years ago when you were first coming over to Kraken, maybe they were a little bit less receptive to this conversation, but now they're starting to chase you down, Kevin, and saying, hey, tell me about this Bitcoin thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Our phones have been ringing off the hook. I think one of the big transitions we've seen over the course of this year is up until now, the litmus test on what institutions, you say institution, but it can mean anything from Tesla to a high frequency trading firm to a family office. And the litmus test up until now of what quote unquote institution was in the space was generally how they viewed the money they were trading. So if it was somebody like a high frequency trading firm or a family office that viewed the funds as their own and the risk theirs to take, they were generally already in the game by now. And what you're seeing now is people who are managing money on behalf of others, whether it's a corporation or an ETF or a large fund, starting to get into the space as well. It's now becoming sort of socially acceptable for fund managers to take allocations in crypto on behalf of their clients. And that is an absolute watershed moment for the industry.
Let's talk about some of that trading, what products folks are trading up over there at Kraken these days. Obviously, the big dog is still Bitcoin out there. Is it still predominantly, from an interest perspective, is it still predominantly spot? Or I know you offer the futures portion as well. You're starting to see a larger percentage of the audience start to migrate into the futures as well, Kevin?
Yeah, so when the market cycle, when it's a lot of new people coming into the space, they tend to gravitate towards the spot trading. We offer trading in more than 50 cryptocurrencies. We support US dollars, euros, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, British pounds, Swiss francs, and Japanese yen. We've got almost 300 markets on the spot side of the business, and we're adding more and more new currencies every month because that's actually one of the big things that drives overall interest in the space. On the futures side, the business is really picking up. We're looking to add quite a few new contracts, but a lot of the new growth has been on the spot side of the business.
Interesting. I know for our audience, a lot of them are interested in the future side as well. That's where a lot of them kind of cut their teeth, it seems like these days, in the crypto side of the space. So in terms of your offering there, is it predominantly the perpetual? I know those are still very popular in the crypto space. Are you starting to offer other contracts beyond that as well, Kevin?
Yeah. So is it helpful to share just a bit of background on how the industry is structured in the future side of the business?
Let's go ahead. Let's share a little bit of background. There's always new listeners joining the show all the time.
Great. So cryptocurrency is a little bit unusual in that there are sort of onshore and offshore venues. The onshore venues like the CME and the crypto facilities regulated MTF in the UK are like properly regulated institutions. But there's actually also a great deal of volume that takes place in offshore venues that are domiciled in places like Panama or the Seychelles. So what we have at crypto facilities today are what are called inverse contracts, where you actually margin in the underlying cryptocurrency itself. So you deposit Bitcoin, which you can buy on Kraken and seamlessly transfer to Kraken futures, and then you are allowed to place trades with up to 50x leverage. We offer perpetuals, monthlies, quarterlies, and semi-annual contracts. And it's been really crazy to watch the growth in the space these days. We've had to increase maximum caps on open interest and trade size several times over the last few months in response to client demand.
It's always good to hear the uptake, really, in client demand. Obviously, the name of the network is the Options Insider Radio Network, so I think I'm legally obligated to ask you about the options side. I know that's still relatively nascent here in the U.S., but is this a aspect of the derivatives marketplace that you folks are starting to pay attention to over there at Kraken? Any maybe insider plans for some options down the road here, Kevin?
Yeah, it's very much on the roadmap for us. We see it as an absolutely integral part of the overall ecosystem and a very valuable financial product to offer. So it is very, very much on our roadmap. Nothing you could share with us in the near term for all the listeners out there who are just glued to their keyboard saying, we want to get some options over there at Kraken right now? No, I think our focus right now is on adding new contracts on the futures side. And we've got some really cool new futures products coming out in the pipeline. But so I think options are going to be a few months down the road. Well, you mentioned some of those interesting new futures products. Give our audience a little bit of a tease. What are you looking at for new futures products in the offing in the coming months at Kraken? Yeah, so we're looking at doing Euro contracts. So it'll be the first Euro-denominated regulated futures venue in the space that'll allow anybody to actually deposit euros and trade any of the contracts that we offer. We're also looking at interesting ways that we can allow people to margin the trading depending on the types of margin they have available to them at the time. So give people quite a lot more flexibility. Well, margin requirements are one of the big complaints we hear on the futures side of the fence. So glad to hear you having a little bit more flexibility on that front. One area where there isn't a lot of flexibility, though, and this goes back to the options conversation as well. You can't really talk new products, new options, particularly here in the U.S., without talking about the flip side of that coin, which is, of course, regulation. Thankfully, our audience is a little bit optimistic on that front. We just ran a listener poll not too long ago, Kevin, with our audience asking, do you think a Bitcoin ETF will be approved here in the U.S. sometime in this year, 2021? And 2/3, 66% of our audience said yes. So I was surprised. I was not maybe quite as optimistic as them, but our audience certainly optimistic. Obviously, you're engaging with this front, doing new products all the time here in the crypto space. That'll also impact what you can offer from an options front here for the U.S. clients, at least, which is, of course, still the predominant listenership for a program like this. So I'm curious from your perspective, Kevin, as you've been engaging and developing new products, are you starting to see a bit of a thawing here in the U.S. when it comes to the regulatory side of crypto, or is it still very much a wait and see as we have this new administration rolling onto the scene? Yeah, it depends a little bit on which leg of the conversation we're talking about. It seems like the ETF conversations are heading in a very good direction overall. From what I can hear on the industry, it seems like I'm quite optimistic that something will get done. I can't say when, but it does seem like people are more receptive. On the derivative side of the game, it is still very difficult to play in a legal way in the U.S. in a regulated way, which is obviously how we'd want to do it. So it is very, very difficult to enter the U.S. market as a derivatives player in cryptocurrency.
Yes, that is still a stickler for a lot of our audience. We get asked this question, I don't know, a couple dozen times a week. Where can I trade options on Bitcoin in the U.S.? And you still have really a very finite number of choices here when it comes to listed, regulated venues here in the US. But, interesting things are afoot here in the crypto space, Kevin. But before we roll out of the crypto hot seat, Kevin, I'd like to leave our audience wanting more, a little bit excited, looking forward to the future. So you touched on the euro-denominated futures. You touched on some of the margin relief. Any other interesting new products, any other interesting new offerings you want to leave with our audience as a bit of a tease, Kevin, here?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones we've got a bank in the U.S. Which we've actually got the license and we're moving ahead very quickly with that. So I think you're going to see Kraken roll out a much broader suite of products across all of the underlying products that we service, and I think it's going to add a huge dimension to the industry over the course of the coming months.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I know a lot of our audience are looking forward to that as well. And it was a pleasure to finally have Kraken here on the crypto hot seat here for the first time here in 2021. We're a little late to the party, but better late than never. We'll keep an eye on the future space over there as well as the spot space over there at Kraken. Keep an eye on how all these new products and all these new initiatives you're offering over there at Kraken, how they unfold in the marketplace in the coming months.
Thank you very much, Mark. It was a pleasure being here and we appreciate it.
Well, now we have to keep the train moving right on into our next segment. It is time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show we break down all the action in the leading crypto asset out there. Of course, we're talking about Bitcoin. A bit of a wild ride since our last show. A little bit of red on the screen, but coming into today's show, more green coming back on the scene, pretty much up about a little over 1,000, almost 1,100 handles since our last show. So Bitcoin, after selling off pretty aggressively over the course of the past week, now starting to feel a little bit of the upside again, threatening the 60K level again, coming at showtime. I had about 57,700 as of this portion of the show. So a far cry from threatening the 50K level like it was last week. It was pretty much a broad sell-off across the board. All the major crypto people were just heading for the exits. Seems like saner, calmer, cooler heads are prevailing. The hodlers back out in force over here. Let's see what's going on out here from an overall analytics perspective. Remember, you folks can play along with the home game. gvol.io is the place to go to get all this data and a whole bunch more from the folks over there at Genesis Volatility. If you're interested in these markets and you listen into a show like this, so I'm assuming you probably are, that's really the only game in town for these kind of analytics. gvol.io, the place to go. If you go there, you can see things like this, the 1 hour volatility over there at Bitcoin. And it's had an interesting journey. Remember on our last show, which was our 100th episode extravaganza, we talked about how Bitcoin vol was at about a 75 when we kicked off this show 100 episodes ago. It was at a 76 on our last episode, the 100th episode. Got a little bit higher in between episodes. Not quite maybe as high as you would have thought, though. Maybe you would have expected a triple digit, something along those lines. Got up to about an 88% on the 25th. And then, of course, came right back down where we are right now, a little bit shy of 72, about a 71, 75 out there. So interesting stuff afoot out there this week. From a vol perspective, a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, easy triple digits out there, but not so much. 71, 75 out there. In terms of the SKEW, the 30-20 SKEW, we saw it was about a 5.8 last show. Come in today's show, about a 4.15. Of course, some of this recent bump we're seeing out there in Bitcoin. Coming into the OI, remember, last show I said most of the OI was aggregated and concentrated in March, and March went off the board this past week. So a lot of OI went with it. On our last show, the hourly open interest, which was about 214,000, now it's about 108,000 and 65,000 over. So obviously a lot of contracts moving off the board since our last show. Let's see here in terms of the notional open interest. Again, the value of what's open out there, that also fell off a cliff as well. Last show, it was right around 14 billion. Coming into today's show is about 10 billion. So you're talking about 4 billion worth of notional OI. Wiped off the board. It'll come back. We see it always come back. It's just these interesting fits and starts, particularly with the quarterly expirations. That's where it seems like a lot of crypto open interest tends to settle, and it goes away pretty aggressively when those go. And then we'll see if a month like April, a non-quarterly, can make it up pretty aggressively. Calls versus puts, again, both of them down quite a bit, but calls and puts still neck and neck in Bitcoin options right now. It's 86,000 contracts open on the call side, which is down about 26,000 from last show, and the puts at 82,000, down about 24,000. So there's still pretty much neck and neck out there, which, again, if you know anything about Bitcoin options, a little bit aberrant right now. So maybe showing some downside concern, and who can blame them? We were threatening 50,000 just a few sessions ago. So interesting stuff afoot. A decent volume week out there with a big day, one big day in particular, really kind of lighting it up out there. That was a 2 billion day back on the 24th, so right before kind of all this mad. That was the day, actually, I do believe, that Musk made his tweet about being able to take Bitcoin for Tesla. So that was by far the most active day of the week. We had 3 other days at right around $1 billion worth of notional volume last week, and everything else was a lot less. So, but a very active day, and that 2 billion in the 3 days of 1 billion, that's pretty aggressive. That 2 billion pretty much tops out everything else we've seen out there. And the other highest day we've seen out there of late was 1.8 billion. That was back on the 23rd of February. And yeah, that was just, I mean, if you add all the venues together, it was right around 2 billion. But we saw 2 billion just on DEREBIT on the 24th of this week. So that, I do believe, is a new record from an overall notional volume perspective. Looking at the expirations, where the OI is lining up now that March is off the board, took about 99,000 contracts with it, listeners. That's what it had open last week. April right now about 41,600, so a far cry from what March was. But that still is up about 27,000 contracts. So new OI is starting to pile into April. So give it some time. Maybe it will catch up to March. But right now, we're still seeing the lion's share of the action was in March, and new stuff starting to pile into April. We got about, like I said, about 41,600. That's the new number one, pretty much more than doubling from last week. Then we got June right behind it at about, looks like about 37,000 or so. So pretty close is June, and it'll probably catch up over time as well. As again, people love a quarterly. Not much love for May out there right now, but June, and then actually Dees is coming in at number 3. It looks like about 22,000 contracts open out there. I know Dees seems like a long way away, but folks are still out there trading the longer term stuff. In terms of strikes, we're the strike action member. One of the mysteries we've all had for a while is what's going on from a strike perspective. People are lining up. I was joking about CoinDesk and Coinbase and those others starting to figure out their size OI on some of these weird strikes to the upside, 80,000 and 100,000. They're a little late to the party, but better late than never. Maybe listening to this show, getting clued in about what's going on the crypto options front. But the 40,000 strike is still number one out there, listeners. It looks like a little bit of it came off from March, about a little over 2,000, about 2.2 thousand contracts rolled off the board this past week. There's about 15,500 left on that strike. That's still good enough for the number one size position out there in Bitcoin options right now. Number 2 is the 50,000 strike with about 10,500. It's a pretty close dance between 50,000 and 48,000. They're about a couple hundred contracts apart. About 10,250 is number 3, the 48,000 strike out there. So they're pretty much neck and neck, pretty much a tie for number 2. Then down to number 4, we got the 80,000 strike, our old friend, still lurking there. Not a lot coming off the board there this past week. So that shows that open interest on the 80,000 strike was clearly not March. There's still almost 10,000 contracts open there. And obviously it's a little bit longer term, which would make sense. That's a pretty distant strike. So 80,000 strike, not really budging too much. Then number 5, we've got the 52,000 strike with about 7,600. If you're wondering what's going on with the 100K strike that people were talking about last week, that one looks like some of that might have been in March, which is surprising if that's the case, because 1,400 of it came off over the course of the past week. So either it expired or the folks closed it. Either way, that one coming down, dropping to number 6 actually, was still 6,300 contracts open on the 100,000 strike. Moving on out to the listed stuff out there on CME Bitcoin options. Again, not having a banner week, the most active week was on Thursday. Our most active day, I should say, was on Thursday with 88 contracts, not even 100 contracts on the tape. You know, the standard caveat, it's a 5x multiplier, but still kind of a light week out there. Futures, different story, pretty active. Friday was actually the light day, 8,000. Thursday was the more active day, 20,000 contracts on the tape. Wednesday and Tuesday both tied about 14,500 and 11,000 on Monday. Going on out to BAKKT, not a lot of contracts on the tape, 1,164. So not a lot worth talking about there. That's down 37%, according to our friend, the BAKKT volume bot, as we keep on rolling into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe. This is the portion of the show where we get beyond Bitcoin, see what else is dominating the altcoin world, except for right now. We break down the top 10. It's kind of hard to escape Bitcoin right now. Let's just do the quick dance to see no Doge in the top 10 this week, listeners. Number 10 is Litecoin with about 13 billion, almost exactly from a market cap perspective. You know the deal by now. Take the market caps with a bit of a grain of salt. Number 9, Theta, almost exactly the same. Yeah, got about 13 billion as well, a little bit north of Litecoin for number 9. Number 8, Uniswap at about 15.2 billion. Number 7, XRP. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Once a firm number 3. Now at risk of being kicked out of the top 10 here. I still got a healthy 25.6 billion. So Uniswap, Theta, and Litecoin have a ways to go. Litecoin, another one of how the mighty have fallen out there. Number 6, Polkadot, 31, almost 32 billion. Number 5, Cardano at about 38.5 billion. Number 4, Tether, 40 and about a half billion over there. Number 3, Binance Coin, 42.25 billion. Numero dos here, ETH, about 210 billion. The big dog, still Bitcoin, still north of the 1T level at about 1.08 trillion. That still doesn't really roll off the tongue yet, listeners. Moving on out to the number 2 on the crypto front. That's, of course, ETH. After selling off pretty aggressively, it was at about a 1770 on our last show, sold off more. Since then, it has bounced back. Now it's up to about 1827, puts it up about 57 handles from our last show. So a good run. In terms of the hourly vol, last show, about an 87.5. It spiked up to back to triple digits ever so briefly on the 25th, 102%. And then it fell right back down to actually below where it was, 81%. So that might be a little bit surprising to a lot of you out there that the crypto vol, after seeing so much movement last week, has come back in, but it has come in pretty aggressively on both Bitcoin and in ETH out here, which again is interesting. We're at levels we haven't seen in quite some time, and really it's not since the dawn of the show have we seen these kind of levels. So interesting stuff afoot. Is that going to remain the case, or are we going to start seeing more vol? Remember on the last show I said we probably would see some more vol intra-week, and we certainly did. But then it went away again almost as quickly, which is kind of interesting. So now it's a question of whether we're in this cycle like we've seen in some commodities like maybe gold, where we see these vol spikes and the vol comes in again very aggressively. Is Bitcoin going to start falling into that category, or is this just the calm before the storm? That's what we'll all be watching here in the coming weeks. In terms of SKEW out here in ETH land, last show was 4.3. Coming into today's show, almost 9, about 8.8 out there. So big swings in the SKEW. Again, OI coming off the board in a massive chunk, though. So take some of these numbers in terms of SKEW and everything else a little bit of a grain of salt, because we're seeing huge amounts of the open interest vanish. That's going to change how things look a little bit. In terms of volume out here in ETH, it was a decent week. The biggest day was actually on the 26th with 225 million. That's, again, decent. That's not blowing the doors off. We saw on the 23rd of February almost 400 million with the notional on DEREBIT, so nowhere close to that. We've even seen recently 264 million out there and some other big numbers well north of 200 million. So 225 is not exactly blowing the doors off out there. OI, again, March rolling off the board. Took a lot of OI with it out here in ETH. Let's see exactly how much we've got left out here. From calls right now, 676,000 contracts. That's down 173,000 from last show, listeners. The puts, 457,000 contracts remaining. That's down to 186,000. So a lot of contracts coming off the board. Calls still very firmly in the lead. It's not quite as close of a dance as it is in Bitcoin out there right now. So obviously calls in the lead more firmly in ETH than they are in Bitcoin. In terms of the hourly open interest, it was close to 1.5 million contracts open on our last show. Coming into today's show is about 1.1 million. So 400,000 contracts roughly rolling off the board. In terms of the notional OI, same deal. It was right about 3 billion on our last show, and they cut about a third of that off this week. So about 2 billion is open right now. Again, looking at this chart, big cliff. We'll see how quickly ETH can bring all that back. Unlike our other products, that's almost entirely all in DEREBIT. 2 billion of that is in DEREBIT, and you got 85 million at OKEX, 63 million at bit.com, and Huobi 13 million. So it's really all DEREBIT all the time when it comes to the ETH options. I forgot who wrote in on the last show asking, where can you trade these 400 strike calls in ETH? Yeah, you pretty much got to go to DEREBIT there. Expiration front, again, March off the board, took actually 556,000 contracts with it. That's what we had open on the show last week. Now June is number one. It's about 324,000 contracts. It's up about 25,000, so it's growing. But crypto likes it quarterly, and that's really more the case in ETH than it even is in Bitcoin. And that's why ETH options are just skipping April and May entirely and going right out to June. June is far and away the big dog out here. Not much really left for the other months to parse. In terms of a strike perspective, a little bit more relevant strikes starting to move into position as some of these crazier strikes have rolled off the board a little bit with March. They're still open, but for a lot less size. The 1600 strike is now number one out there with about 62,000 contracts. That's down about 9,000 from last week, but not as much as some of the other ones. We also, it's kind of a bit of a tie actually between the 1600 strike and then the 320 strike. Both of them have about 62,000 contracts open. 5,000 came off the 320 strike. So only 5,000 of those contracts were in March, pretty much. The rest are still open, listeners. Then we jump to the crazy strike we were talking about that the listener asked about last week, the 400 strike. There's still 61,000 of those open out there. That's down 21,000. So a larger percentage of those were from March. But still, there's still 61,000 open on that strike. So some folks were playing pretty far out there on the 400 strike, and they obviously are still holding the 480 strike has 51,000 contracts open. That's our number 4 size position in ETH right now. That's down 16,000. So a lot of contracts are coming off the board, but still, these deep in the money strikes are still open for size. 320 strike number 2, 62,000. 400 strike number 3, 61,000, and the 480 strike number 4 with 51,000. The only really relevant strike there is the 1600 strike with just barely eking it out with 62,000. So you're talking a few hundred contracts more than the 320 strike, which is just nuts. In terms of the other big crypto you folks like to trade out there, Ripple off about 3 cents from our last show, but still at decent levels here. 56 is not like it's threatening the 40-cent handle in the other direction like it was last week for a while there. Bitcoin Cash down about 14, almost 15 handles. And Bitcoin SV down about 7 points from our last show. If you're wondering, the mighty Doge off 0.002786 to be precise since our last show. And before we go, let's see if we can take some of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to your question segment. This is where you folks hit us up. You've been deluging us with some fun questions. See if we can squeeze a few on here before we wrap up. First, we got a little bit of comment, a little bit of love here from Emma. She says, congrats. Congrats on being the first people talking about sizable upside open interest in Bitcoin and ETH options. Thanks so much. Keep it up. Well, thank you for that, Emma. You're right. We're kind of still the only game in town when it comes to talking about this stuff, even though we have seen some outlets. I tease them, but it's nice to see that they're coming on to the party. Better late than never in terms of the options. They're starting to notice these positions. They're still a little bit maybe fuzzy on what it means. They're reading some intent there that maybe isn't the case and vice versa. But it's interesting to see that some folks are starting outlet-wise, starting to pick up on the stuff a little bit more. It's going to become much more relevant as these markets grow and mature. Look at the traditional markets. The options markets are very much where the quote-unquote smart money plays and the institutions play. And that's where we see a lot of these big movements in the underlying. They start typically in the options market. So it's interesting to see as these crypto markets develop and mature, we'll see options probably leading the way. So it is an important aspect of the space to pay attention to. And if you're not doing it, you're missing out on a lot of the information that's going up out there. So we're happy to have been early in this space, Emma, and we're happy that folks like you are enjoying it. And the more the merrier, we always say when it comes to talking about all things crypto derivatives. And let's come up here. Let's wrap it up with this question from MJT. Here's a question I think a lot of us want to know about. What's up with those Bitcoin 100,000 calls? Yeah, that's a good question, MJT. As I broke down there in the Bitcoin breakdown segment, you could see that there has been a bit of a change in terms of OI out there. Let's go back up to that segment so we can talk specifically about that. Yeah, the 100,000 strike, a few of them came off the board, about 1,400. So that means there was, strangely enough, probably some March positioning on the 100,000 strike. Not the smartest of positioning, I have to say. That's a pretty aggressive move, even for the most diehard of hodlers, nearly doubling by March expiration. That's probably a bridge too far. So it does seem like either they were March or they just took them off. They decided to get the heck out of Dodge. Either way, there was a decent amount of paper coming off on that strike, but there's still 6,300 contracts open as of showtime on that strike. So it is by no means a de minimis strike. Like I said, it's the number 6 overall size position in Bitcoin options right now. And the 80,000 strike is about 9,600. So it's got more size open. We made fun of the 30,000 calls back in October, but those turned out to be a fantastic trade. So I shan't mock these far upside strikes anymore. I will say, if you're going to do this, you do have to have a lot of time for this to play out. So hopefully the remainder of these 100,000 calls are a little bit farther down the chain than March, because otherwise that's a rough road to go down out there. But it seems like, these days, I forgot the name of the listener there. I think it was MJT. These days, it's hard to read intent into these too much because there's so much, shall we say, quote unquote, insane paper floating around out there in some of these strikes. But given the movements we've seen in Bitcoin and the just extreme exuberance we have to the upside, it does look like these are probably opening buys, and it does look like these are probably positioning for the upside. When we first saw those 30,000 calls, there was some hemming and hawing going on, but maybe it was so outlandish. It seemed like it was probably just some risk managers maybe taking some obscene upside risk off their board to make their risk profile look a little bit easier. Now that we're in this new era, this new regime of Bitcoin, it does seem like this is probably what it appears to be on the surface, buying paper for some diehard Bitcoin optimists out there trying to swing for the fences. So we will keep an eye on these, MJT and everyone else out there, because it's a fascinating strike to keep an eye on, and that and the 80,000 strike. I mean, if we're heading to those levels, it's a very, very different game entirely from even where we are right now, which again is already pretty lofty level. So we'll keep an eye on those, and when we see changes, and we'll update you week on week here on the show. It's kind of what we do here. So if you guys have questions about anything trading in Bitcoin, maybe you have a specific strike like MJT, or maybe you have something else, hit us up. Let us know. We do love to hear from all of you out there. All right. And that music means we've come to the end on this week's journey through the world of crypto derivatives. I want to thank Kevin for joining us over there at Kraken. Finally got Kraken on the show. It's funny. It's been 2+ years and we actually haven't brought Kraken. We have any other exchange on the planet on here with them. So it's glad to see we've now added Kraken to the list over there. So check them out over there. You know where to find Kraken. You don't need me to send you over there. But interesting stuff. Sounds like they're cranking away on some interesting new products, some new flexibility on the margin front as well. And hopefully, as he alluded to, maybe sometime once we get all the regulatory ducks in the row here in the U.S., we'll see some options over there at Kraken. I also want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live, for sending in such great questions. Keep them coming. We'll see you back here tomorrow, Interview Tuesday. For a lot of you who are new to the options scene, Wednesday, Education Wednesday should be a big one for you. Options Playbook Radio, Options Bootcamp. 2 shows that will help you get a grasp, get a handle on these crazy things called options. Thursday, you got TWIFO as well as the Option Block. Friday, Volatility Views. And we kick it all off again on Monday with another episode of the Crypto Rundown.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.